All right. Raj, Jed talked today and said some interesting things. Why don't we start
Hmm.
right there?
Let's do it.
Um, I thought it was, it's funny. He said that he didn't think it was a primary, didn't think it was a big deal that he became the primary owner today. What do you think? Is it a big deal that Jed's the primary owner?
I think he played it down. I think that's a big deal. I mean, primary owner is a big deal in my end. I mean, I guess he really typically was like the owner, but now he's the principal owner. He has the title. Like he was the CEO before, obviously, but he was doing the owner type stuff. I think it is a big deal. I love it for him. Jed's come a long way with being front office guy on this team, CEO, and now owner and everything. When he first came in, it looked like things were gonna go good. And then, the whole Trent Baalke situation, Harbaugh issue, and all that kind of made him look bad, and nobody wanted him. But it kind of started getting down to like a really boiling point to him. And I think he realized he was on the hot seat. And I think he was okay, I got to choose greatness over my friends and get the right people in there. And I think, again, he's kind of righted his wrongs. He had to fire his friend, and that was a big decision for him. Got rid of those coaches that weren't winning. And he's brought along Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, and they've really turned this program around. They've become, perennial contenders. I know they haven't got it done all the way, but they've become so close. I think this is big for Jed, and I like that for him. I think this was a huge deal for him, but I like that he downplayed it. He's a little humble, so I like it.
Um, I mean, I to me, it was a fait accompli. I mean, right? I mean, what are they going to give the ownership to somebody else? I mean, they're going to keep it in the family. It's an incredible asset. Why would you ever walk away from the NFL? The one thing you don't see a lot of is you don't see a lot of NFL teams being for sale. Why is that? Because it's too profitable and it's growing at such a rate that very few owners are going to want to sell unless somebody dies or there's some other issue in the family. So I never expected them to move on from Jed. I expected Jed to, get this role as the lead owner. What'd you think of Grant's question? Grant was like, "Hey, originally, in the Harbaugh era, you're tweeting out, we judge ourselves on Lombardi trophies, and now you're saying you're happy with losing to the Lions in the NFC Championship game." And Jed's answer was, you can't be ashamed of successful seasons. What do you think? Should Jed have higher standards than he does currently?
I think he does have high standards, but I think he also realized it's hard to get all the way to a championship game. Like, I'm sure they all wanted to win a Super Bowl. A couple years ago, he had that speech in the locker room when his brother passed, and he cried and broke down. He says, "One of these days, we're going to be holding a championship." He wants to win a title. This family has been trying to chase that ring. Back in the day, they were getting Lombardis, and I think he still has that same mentality of the standard is you need a winner Lombardi. I think the whole team does, but it's not easy, Larry, these days to get to the top of the mountain. And they've been so close so many times. But the fact that they have gotten to that point, it's not easy. Like they're like on the cusp of being a dynasty, but obviously you can't until you win a Super Bowl. Of course, they need to have high standards of winning a Super Bowl. I don't think they're happy with losing the Super Bowl, but the fact that they're getting close, I think it's something to, be happy and cheer for as a fan. I'm not happy that they lost the Super Bowl, but it's been great, getting to that point and seeing the journey because I'd rather them get down to a NFC Championship game or a Super Bowl than 5-win season and being a crappy team. We were there. We were there for many years when they were like it was a dark cloud hanging over his team. It's like, oh man, I mean, to his point, like, yeah, it's nice to win every year, but there is more that needs to be done. They do need to win a Super Bowl. The standards need to be high. So I saw it both ways, honestly.
I don't have a problem with really anything Jed has said as far as you can't be as a fan, you can be in this, ecstasy, agony kind of lane. That's fine. But when you're the owner, when you're in the organization itself, there's too many man hours invested. There's too many people's jobs on the line. There's just too many. The investment is so sizable when it comes to hours committed to trying to win that if you make it to, there's 32 teams in the league and you're better than 31 of them, you can't sit there and be like, it's failure. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just, I know it's, you want to have high standards, and but you just can't have high standards. The only thing I will say is that, I didn't like hearing Jed, say a bunch of things like, well, in Eddie D's day, they didn't have this and they didn't have that. It's like that's a slippery slope as well. Eddie D won his rings. Let's not besmirch him in any way. Let's not try to make it seem like his accomplishment was any less,
Hmm.
just because it didn't come during the salary cap era. I think that's
Yeah.
where, if I was Jed, I think I would have shut up. But I'm not. I got no problem with Jed saying, "Hey, it was a good year. It was a good year." And then, he's talking about it in the context of his 11-year-old who's like, in tears. And it's like, yeah, you got to be the adult. You got to be the guy who says, hey, you know what? Yeah, we lost and it hurts, but it's all right. We'll get them next time. Sometimes you got to be that person in your family, if you're there with your 11-year-old. So I think that has a lot to do with his standards as well. I don't think his standards are lower or like, oh, we don't really care about winning a Super Bowl. I think he desperately wants to win a Super Bowl, but I think he understands that you're not just going to rip the whole thing to shreds and tear it down and fire Shanahan and fire Lynch because you don't make it to your ultimate goal in the 2023 season. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's my take on it.
No, absolutely. They've gotten so close. It's like, what do they need to get over the hump? And now we're sitting there like, okay, we've added this. They add players to this roster every year. It's not like they don't want to compete. It's not like they don't want to win a championship. I think everybody's goal should be to win a championship, right? But some teams are just trying to make it to the playoffs or win the division. The Niners, their goal is to win a Super Bowl, and they've gotten so close. But yeah, unfortunately, one team is going to win it all, and the rest of them end in a painful heartache. And some heartache is more if you get closer to the end, which the 49ers typically do, and it's painful. I get it, but to say that they don't have high standards, I think that's the crazy point. And I think everything he said was great, and I think it was right. But I do agree with you in the sense of you can't belittle the old days because a lot of people do. Like, well, it's harder these days to win. It might be, but it was also difficult to win back then because the league there wasn't a lot of rules with defense can't do this, defense can't do. You can't touch the quarterback. You were hitting guys like crazy back then, so it was hard to win in those days. But yes, the salary cap has changed the complexity of the game. But there's two different eras. It's so hard to compete, compare. It's just like whenever people say, "Well, is this guy the GOAT? Is this guy the GOAT?" It's sometimes it's hard to compare the eras, but I think you should respect every champion in every era for what they were in that time because at that moment in time, they were the greatest. But then in another era, somebody else is the greatest. So it's tough to compare. I think Jed should have just said, you know what? Eddie D was amazing because he did great. And guess what? They won Super Bowls back then. Niners haven't. So you can't sit there and bring his down just to make yourself feel better by not winning. Because guess what? Those Super Bowl championships, you can't take them away. So
Well, and the fans are, it just makes you look small.
yeah,
I'd like to have 9 defensive tackles. I'd like to have better backups. I'd like to have, it's like, okay, let's give Eddie his and let's hope for the best in this era.
yeah,
Um, I think it's interesting too. I Jed says a lot of things that are very true. I mean, he says that you have to build through the draft. He admitted that the Niners got lucky with Brock Purdy.
yeah,
Um, he said you got to build the team through the draft. He says I'd rather pay guys that we draft and develop than overpay in free agency. I think that's absolutely right. I think that is the right and correct mindset to have if you're building a Super Bowl champion. So I like that he's at least, he's in reality. And I agree with what he said there. I don't know how you feel about that.
yeah. I agree, and I think the Niners have been showcasing they've done that. They've drafted so good, and they typically pay their stars that they developed through the draft. Kittle, Debo, Bosa, Warner, et cetera, et cetera. Now Ayuk's the next one, and they typically, if they draft a guy and he becomes a star in the league, they're going to pay him, and that's the way to do it. It's a homegrown system. It's like a farm system, and that's what they do. They get homegrown talent. They go out, they scout these guys. They can save some money for a few years while they develop, and then boom, now we got to pay this guy because he really worked hard for that reward, and he stuck it through. And look, now we're going to reward him by saying, hey, look, you put in the work, you showed us you can be great. Now we're going to pay you because you were great for us, and that's our token of appreciation. So I love the way that the Niners build their team. And again, most of their guys are through the draft. I mean, yeah, they're going to get some free agents here and there, but they're not wasting their money on guys. They make it smart, and tactical when they do get free agents. I think they do a very good job of getting guys that fit their system and that are not going to break the bank. I mean, there's a few times where they go and make a splash, and that's exciting. Hargrave, that was exciting. CMC, the trade, and if they need to, they'll go and upgrade the roster. A couple years ago, Emmanuel Sanders, that was fun to see. But overall, I do love the way that the Niners built through the draft, and I think this is the right way. But it's not always something that teams can do. You have to be able to be really good at scouting and drafting. And they've developed a good front office. They've developed a good coaching staff that can develop that talent. Chris Kasurk, one of them, though. And as we've seen over the years, all those good front office members and all those good coaching members, they're around the league. They're all over the league, Larry. Look around. There's head coaches, there's GMs that used to be on the Niners all over the league. You saw the pictures, right, at the owners meeting, and all the pictures. Most of those guys were Niners before. It's crazy. So yeah, Niners do it the right way.
Also says, what do you guys think of Jed's comments about Eddie D winning without a salary cap? Uh, Jesse kind of thought he was taking shots at his uncle. Well, as Raj and I are talking about here, it's like it's and where are you going with that? It's like where are you going with that? At the end of the day, what are we discrediting championships that the franchise has? Come on, I mean, um, I could have done without those comments, to be
Yeah,
honest.
I didn't like it.
One of the questions I thought was kind of interesting, or one of the comments from Jed, he says it's a good problem that Brock will be the highest paid 49er at some point next year, and one of the highest paid players in the NFL. And then Jed said Brock has a chance to be an all-time great quarterback in the years ahead. I agree with that, but some people would say that's controversial. What do you think?
I don't think so. If he has another season like he did last year, he's going to get paid accordingly. It makes sense. He's going to be on the, he's going to be on that year to earn his money. And again, if he has a second season of starting and puts up similar numbers or better than what he did last year in his first year of starting, he was MVP candidate until the Christmas game against the Ravens. He was NFL FedEx, player of the year. He set a franchise record in passing yards. It's not a bad statement. I just feel like people still gonna, underrate Purdy. They still don't think he's good because of the weapons on the team. He'll never live that down until he wins a Super Bowl, but people will still hate on Purdy no matter what. Purdy's always has to prove himself because he was the last pick of the draft, and he's only good because of this. He's only good because of this player, and da 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 da. But absolutely, if he has another season like he just did, Larry, he's going to get paid a lot of money from the 49ers. They found their franchise guy. They talk about him very highly every single chance they get. Jed does, John Lynch does, Kyle Shanahan, the players do. It's not just lip service. They see it. They see what they have. They're blessed, like they said. They got lucky to get this guy because they made so many mistakes in the quarterback front. Like we've sat here for years crying about quarterback, and now we finally have the franchise quarterback. As long as he can stay healthy, we're good. And last year he was coming off of the UCL tear and all that. He was rehabbing. This offseason, he doesn't have to rehab, Larry. He's going to get better this offseason. He's going to be training, making himself better instead of having to work from coming off of the surgery. So I think it was a fair statement, and I think he's going to get paid handsomely.